Alright, so in one of the videos I did cover using Parcel for basically taking SASS files and making CSS files. Now in this one I'm going to talk about a little more general use for HTML files, JavaScript files, and CSS kind of combined. So let's go ahead and start a folder on our computer. So I'm going to right click to new folder and I'm going to call this one basic HTML. Apparently I'm going to go ahead and open this in VS Code. So as usual, you should have Node and VS Code installed. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few folders here. So a basic HTML website would have HTML, JavaScript, and CSS files. So let's first create a folder to have all these files in a folder. So I'm going to create a folder. It doesn't matter what you call it. I'm going to call it SRC. We'll call this as our source files. So in this folder, I'm going to create a couple of other folders. So I'm going to create a folder for CSS, and I'm going to create a folder in that same SRC folder, JS for JavaScript. Now, JS didn't go to the right place, so I'm going to try to drag it over to this source folder. Now, in this source folder, I have two folders, basically. So what I'm going to do in this source folder, I'm going to create an HTML file. In addition to this, I'm going to create a CSS file and JavaScript file. So the JavaScript file, apparently this is not in the right folder. Let's just drag it over to the source folder. There it is. Now in this folder, I'm going to add a JavaScript file. So let's just call it main.js. Should be good enough. And in our CSS folder, I'm going to actually create a SASS file. So I'll call it main.SCSS. So as usual, that SASS needs to become CSS so the browser can handle it and all of that. But that's kind of the point of using bundlers like Parcel. A lot of times you may want to use SASS or use newer JavaScript features and still have it be compatible with a lot of browsers without having to think about, am I using vars, am I using lats? So let's just do a quick setup here. So we have these two folders, CSS and JS. We have the files. Now in this index.html, let's just create a basic HTML setup by doing !tab and just link to that JavaScript file and the SASS file. So I'll go ahead and first do a div with an ID app that has nothing to do with the rest. Then I link to my JavaScript file. So I'm going to do script a source tag, and we need to link to, in our current folder, we have the JS folder, and in that folder, we have main.js. So that's the path to that JavaScript file. Now, to link to a CSS file, we should do it in our head section. So we're going to do a link like this. The file we're going to be linking to is that SCSS file. Let's actually open this and go through the path again. So in CSS folder, we have our SCSS file. So now if you open this HTML file in a browser, this style sheet is not going to load because it cannot handle SASS files. But I'm going to go ahead and hit save on this. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this SCSS and let's just create a quick variable here. And let's just create some sort of rule for the body. And we'll do some background color. So we'll do the background color, and what we'll do, we'll take that purple, which is our main color. And basically what this allows us to do is to take the main color and kind of make it more lighter by some sort of percentage. So we'll do like 90% lighter. I'll just keep it like this. The only reason I'm doing this is just to have some SASS. You could just do straight CSS in this file. It would be fine. So I'm going to save that. So we have this SASS file. Now in my JavaScript, I'm going to go here and create an array. And I'll be using a const for this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to loop through that array and multiply all these numbers by 4, for example. So I'll do data.map. And then I'll say for each item, we'll do an arrow function here. And we'll say, let's take the item and multiply it by 7. And that should return whatever it returns. So let's just call it new data. And then let's just take that new data and apply it to this app as an HTML item. So we'll do list items or something like that. So what I'll do, I'll take that new data. And again, the point of this is not so much what I'm doing. You'll see why I'm doing these things, and I'm going to try to explain to you why we use parcel in the end of the day, right? So I'm going to take this new data, and I'm going to do a for each loop. And then for each, again, item in that new array, we're going to do an arrow function. And here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take our document and create an element. And we'll call this li. And that will make a list item. Then we'll take that list item and change the text content of that list item to whatever the item is, which will be the number multiplied by 7. And then we'll just append it to our app right here. So to append it to that, let's make sure we just get that somewhere on top here. And for that, we'll use get element by ID. And the ID is app for this. So once we get that element, now this is the app element. What we'll do, we'll take that app and append child. And we'll basically be appending that list item to this. So the ID is going to be, we'll take this array, multiply all the numbers by 7. Then we'll create a list with all those numbers in this HTML inside of this div app. That's pretty much it. And we also have all this like colors. And let's just also add some list item styles here. We'll do color is our main color. And we'll do the font size is 25 pixels. Doesn't matter. So some rules. So that's pretty much it. So that's all I'm going to do here. Let's go ahead now and use Parcel to bundle this to a final project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open my terminal. Now you need to have Parcel installed. Now the website for Parcel is parceljs.org. So if you go here under documentation, you'll get to getting started. I did cover this installation in my CSS and SASS videos. If you want more detailed installation instructions, watch those. I did cover Windows and Mac, all of these things, wherever you have to do whatever you have to do. Here, I'm just gonna keep it simple. See, we have to just run this to install this. Now, usually we want to make sure we initialize our node project first though. So before all of this, now just remember the main folder we have, it just has this src folder that has all this HTML and JavaScript and SASS files. But right now here in this terminal, I'm in this main folder. So I'm going to start by doing npm init-y to just initialize our JSON file. And then if you don't have Parcel installed, you want to go ahead and run this npm install-g Parcel Bundler. If you did this before with this -g, it should be installed globally. So you don't have to install this the next time you want to use it on a different project. So for me, this is installed, so I'm not going to run this. Again, if you want more detailed installation instruction on this, if you run this, it doesn't work, watch my CSS Parcel video. I'll link it in the description. Now I'm going to go here and basically because it's installed, I can just use it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bundle this to an output file. So what I do here, I do parcel build. And what I do now, I need to put the input file. So usually if I was using a SASS file, I would point to that SASS file. In this case, I'm trying to bundle this whole thing. And in our case, what happens is that this HTML is the input file that's linking to all these other files that it needs. So all we have to do is just provide this HTML input, and then it's just going to figure out what SASS files and JavaScript files, whatever it's linking to, and just do what it's supposed to do. So all I have to do is just say the input file is going to be, well, we have that src directory, and the file name is called index.html. I'm going to add a couple of things to this. In addition to that, I want to make sure I don't have any source maps. So what I do -- no source -maps to not have those. In this case, I'm also going to do no minify. So you can actually read the output, but generally we're not going to do that. We'll remove it at some point. So for now, I don't think I'm going to add anything else. So let's just run this like this, and then we'll talk about some things that we're going to add to this in addition to this. So I'm going to run this. Okay, that should be maps, not map. Now you'll see we have a couple of other files here, etc. But the main thing we want to look at is this dist folder. So if I open that, if you see here, it has an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and a CSS file. If I open the CSS file, you'll see that this is that compiled file. So apparently 90% lighter, that's white. I guess we'll just try to do like 80% the next time to see what happens. Or maybe even 70%. So let me just try this one more time. Rerun this with 70%. Let me just close all of this. I want to just look in this dist folder so it's not confusing. So let's just go check this CSS now. So see this one? This is the new one. It has a different color. So it's a light purple color of some sort, with now new like 70% or whatever I did. So now we have a regular CSS file basically. Now with this, let's look at this JavaScript file. So if you look here, this has tons of stuff. And most of this stuff, it's adding mostly for compatibility reasons. But let me just show you one thing. If I scroll all the way down, I should be able to get a glimpse of some of the code that I wrote. So if you look at this code, see here, it says var app equals document get element by ID. Now, if you remember my JavaScript file, if I go and open the way I was writing the code, I did const this equals to this. So it basically took what I wrote and it changed the code to make it compatible for other browsers. It's changing a bunch of stuff here. So for example, if you look at this map, it's not using the syntax I was using. So if you were using the old JavaScript syntax, which is something you will see me do all the time when I'm in that editor for AppScript HTML, and I do this, I basically write it all this way with this function and all of that stuff. That's what it's changing it to. But the actual thing I wrote was this. So it took this and it basically went with the old syntax. And the old way you would write this would be map, right? And then in this map, you would create this callback function. And in here, you would just pass that item. And here you would return item times 7. But now with ES6, I can do this. And I can have Parcel take care of this whole thing for me. And it will basically re-render this with that syntax. So if you look here, that's exactly what it did. And then the same thing if I look at for each. See, it went with function, item. This is var now. So it took care of all of that. So now I can write new ES6 JavaScript and have Parcel just compile it to be compatible with more browsers. And again, if we look in our HTML file, which is the last piece, and what it's doing, it's basically just linking to this CSS file that it just generated. And then if I scroll down, it also creates this JavaScript file that it also just generated. So it's just linking to those from this output HTML. It also keeps the older file too. See this old CSS? It keeps that one, but in our HTML, it's just linking to the last one we ran. So one of the things when you're generating this is that this URL. So right now, it has this path by default to have the slash in front of all of those things. Now, if we try to open this HTML file in our folder, pretty much just like this, and try to take a look what's going on. And I look in the console, see it says loading failed for the script with source. So it's trying to find the source in the wrong spot because of the path that was provided here. So to change this, what we're going to do, we can also, when we run this build command, we can also output the destination. And for that, I just go back here and do --public -URL. And then I can point to what is this link relevant to. So in our case, we'll just do to our root folder for now. If you have like a domain, you could do the domain, like something.com. For me, I'm just going to do a dot to do relevant to the main folder. So I'm going to just do this and rerun this so you can see what happens. Remember, I'm working with this source file, but this is the dist output file. So if you look here, now it's just pointing inside of the same folder for this and for this. So if I go back and reopen this, see, this actually works now. We have the background, we have our JavaScript rendering all this stuff, and in our console, there are no errors. Getting back to this, so now you can see how it generates this cache folder every time you run this. In our case, we're not going to use that. So I'm going to delete that. As a matter of fact, you can always delete this dist folder too. Every time you rerun this, it will recreate that folder for you and it will just output it. But I'm just going to go back here. I don't want those cache files, so I'll just do no cache. And you can also do a different output directory. So I'll do that next too. So let me just run this so you can see what happens. See, now there's no cache folder anymore. It has just a dist with all of these final files. So all of these commands I'm adding here, they're all coming from Parcel documentation. So if you just open here and go to this CLI, everything I'm adding here is going to be in here someplace. So if I scroll down, see, no minify. So it doesn't minify the code. And if I keep scrolling down, you'll see there is these different things like out dir, which will be the output directory, which is what we'll use in just a second. So I'm going to copy that while I'm in this. And then see public URL. So that was the one that I just did a second ago. So all of these things, if you're trying to find if there are more things you can do, they're all here. Now, for me, I'm going to go back and add that output directory to this. So let's say we don't want it to go to this dist directory. We have our own output directory. So I can create another folder here. So that folder is basically sitting on top here on this level. So now what I can do, I can just go and add this out dir to this and then point to that out directory. So that's where I want all this stuff to be outputted. So I'm going to do this and run this. So it still ran, and if I go and look inside of that out, now I have these files compiled in this folder. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty crazy command to type, right? So what we can do, we can just store it in our package.json as a command, so we can run it with something shorter than this. So I'm going to go to this package.json. We have the scripts here, so we don't need this test script. We're going to rename that. We're going to call this BLD Lite. So actually, let's just call it build Lite. So we'll just do this. I'm going to just paste the command within those quotes, and I removed whatever command was before just to make sure you understand what I did here. So basically it was this, and I just copied this command from here and I pasted right in there. And save. So now to run that build Lite, we can simply just do npm run and then the name build Lite. And it will basically be the same command, only now we have something shorter we can run to get to the same thing. And it's outputting to that output directory right here. But we're not really going to be doing anything in this output directory. We'll be doing our work in the source folder. Now, Parcel also has an option for you to kind of have an auto refreshing experience as you're building your HTML, CSS, JavaScript during development. And then you can build the output the way I'm doing to get the final result. So the way you can do that, you can simply just type parcel and then the input file path. So in my case, that's src/index.html. Pretty much as simple as that. I'm going to run this. So if you look here, it says server running at localhost 1234. So if you just open this in your browser, you'll see that it opened that thing that I'm building. And what's cool about this is that now I can just close all this output directories, etc., and just concentrate on working on my source files. So I can go here and let's say we decided to make some changes here, right? So I'm going to go to my SASS file and change some things. So let's say we don't want this to be 25 as font size. We want this to be 45 to make it bigger. Or maybe we want to do some sort of text decoration. Underline. If I save this and just open the browser, I don't have to refresh or anything. It will automatically reload and show me the results of what I just did. The same thing is going to happen if I go to my JavaScript file here. So let's say we go here and add a couple of other things. So 3 to 33. If I save this, I go back and reload, you'll see now that array expanded. So now we got these results, right? Now we can also make this modular development for us. Instead of having one CSS, one JavaScript, and one HTML file, we can go here, and because we're working with SASS, we can just go ahead and add some partial SASS files here. So I can go under this CSS folder and add another SCSS file, and we'll just call it other SCSS and just put some other things in here. Let's just make our div with some sort of background color. So I'll make it green and add some padding. And now I can take this and import it in my main SCSS file. That's that other file. So if I save this and go back and check this out, see we have the div with a padding. Again, it looks horrible, but that's kind of not the point of this whole thing. Now I have this modular thing where I can have multiple CSS files. The output is still going to be one thing, right? JavaScript, one HTML, one CSS, but the input can be all these different files that I can just now import. I can also do different JavaScript files. So I can go here and add another JavaScript. And then I can create something here that I can export and use it in my main JavaScript. And we can just export this out of this module. And now we should be able to import this object in our main.js. So I can save this, go here, and on top here, we can just import that. So that's this other.js file I'm trying to import. And the export is this person object. So let's just go to our main.js and just console log it down here. So let's save this, go back and take a look. So if I open my console log, see, it basically exports this object, age 34, gender, name, which means now we could use those too. So I can go in here and let's just add an age 1. And that will be person dot name, the content inside of h1, and we'll append it to that same, this should be h1 actually. h1 text content, and we'll append that h1 to the same app, just like this, save it. Let's go check this out. So see, we have Joe now. So now I can also have multiple JavaScript files and I can export things out of one JavaScript file, import it in the other. The output is still going to be the same. It's one JavaScript file, one CSS, and one HTML. And then if you keep building this, you're done. Control C gets you out of this. And if you want the final output that you're going to deploy someplace, this is where you do that command, but we're going to change it a little bit. So what you would do, you would just go in here and let's actually keep this one and add another command. So comma and paste the same line pretty much. Only this one, we'll just call it build. Actually, let's just keep it short and simple. This is the way I like to have these names. And we're going to remove this no minify. Save this. So now I should be able to run it by doing run BLD. And as you can see, it had to go get some extra stuff in there, but it did what it had to do. Now, if I go back and look at my output directory, I should have my files. And that's pretty much how Parcel works on a basic level. So it allows you to have this way that you set up your project the way you want it, with all these different files separated, and then just get an output in a way that your browser would like it. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.